And welcome back to Morning Shots. With me today is a guest. It's Herman Mashaba, who is the president of Action SA. Hello, Herman. Welcome to the show.
Hi, good afternoon, and thank you so very much for inviting me to have this discussion. In particular, you're touching on a subject of people actually understanding the policies of what Action SA stands for. So, which is very important. We can be a political party, about our name, but that's not good enough. Our country is facing huge challenges, and I think it's very important for a new political party like us to really get people to know what we stand for.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people are now pointing to obviously a coalition government for 2024. So a lot of people are looking for an alternative now to the ANC. It looks like, according to the latest polling, the ANC probably won't win a majority, which means that we're going to get a coalition government regardless in 2024. So I think what a lot of people are now looking to is like, okay, and we see it a lot on Twitter and online. They're looking to the different politicians and they go, what do you stand for and why should I vote for you? But obviously the media don't really cover that because what they want to cover is like scandals. So this will give you a good opportunity today just to kind of go over various things that are important to the members of the audience and just go over them and see what Action SA's stances on these.
No, I think it's really very important. Moreover, I think I just obviously want to confirm something to you that it's no longer just really a guesswork type that the ANC is not going to be in government in 2024 because they will be lucky if they'll be anywhere close to 40%. My view is to really take them in the early 30s, late 20s, and we're working hard towards that because there's low-hanging fruits out there. 20 million South Africans who stayed away from voting that we as Section SA are really targeting. We're on a massive campaign of getting this 10 million people who've not even bothered to vote. We are registering them to ensure that they understand the power of democracy and the power of their vote. And over and above that, ANC is losing support without us doing anything at all. So I think that's really why personally I'm convinced that we are going to have a multi-party government come 2024, and we are convinced as Action SA to emerge as the second biggest political party to the ANC, and will be the party that's going to drive in ensuring that we put together not just a coalition government, a multi-party government that is going to serve the people of this country and really save us from this hell that ANC subjected to over the last 28 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, the current polling, I looked yesterday, and I think the ANC, based on some recent by elections, was polling at around 41%. So it doesn't look, and that's today. We still got 2 years to go. So yeah, it's not looking good for them. So I think we'll start off with the main one, which is the one that gets raised quite a lot on our audience, and that's the topic of the NHR. The NHR is obviously concerning for a lot of the audience because they've seen what government overreach and mismanagement of funds looks like. What's Action SA's stance on the NHR?
Well, NHI, for anyone to think that you can implement NHI in a country that's literally bankrupt, with the public health system, which the ANC has collapsed, I think it would really be one of the biggest mistakes. And I think, honestly, any politician who can actually ever think about that would really be smoking something or living in another world. We believe as Section SA we need to encourage private sector to provide services to those who can afford. But at the same time, as government, ensure that we dramatically improve our public healthcare system. The nice things like the NHI, hopefully in 20 odd years or time or so, we can look at that. But at this point in time, South Africa is not ready for that. And we don't really believe it would be fair for us as a country to discourage those who can afford private health care to deprive them of such an opportunity. You see, the ANC with their communist socialist thinking, they think everyone is the same. I mean, that's the kind of nonsense that they can ask the Russians since 1917. That system cannot really work. What you do, encourage private sector investment, because once you've got private sector investment, the economy grows, and when the economy grows, government, then you've got a professional government that runs on the basis of having a professional public service that does not really look at South Africans on the basis of color. We look at South Africans on the basis of their skills. Because once you put a public service like that, when you go to a public hospital, you'll get the kind of public healthcare like you did. Obviously, no ways immediately will be able to compete with private healthcare practitioners. But over time, as government improves their revenue collections, they've got less people dependent on government. One, over time, will be able to really improve our public hospitals and all our facilities to do with the provision of healthcare to those who cannot afford private healthcare.
Mm. So obviously a key thing that you've mentioned here is obviously the private sector and expanding the private sector in order to be able to provide those services and thereby grow the economy. And one of the things that we've seen quite recently in the ANC's policy conference is that their idea of growing the private sector is actually controlling it by the states. It's kind of like if they grow the public sector, that they seem to think that for some reason that's going to naturally grow the private sector, but that's not actually how it works in reality. Now, a big thing, obviously, in the ANC's idea behind how they're going to grow the private sector is that of BEE, or broad-based black economic empowerment.
Brought back to economic empowerment. I mean,
Mm.
those policies are the ones that have put us into this mess today. It is because of discriminatory policies that South Africa is in the quagmire we're in right now. So we as Action SA, we believe in non-racial South Africa. If you look at when we launched the political, our party on the 29th of August 2020, and we are unapologetic about this, that our first core value, it's an unracial South Africa, and I call upon South Africans looking for racial political parties to go somewhere else. Please don't really worry us and engage us on any other policy except a creation and establishment of a non-racial South Africa. If you believe you want racial political party, please leave us alone. I think we believe in utilizing the skills of all South Africans so that you can provide services to South Africans, have a professional public service, everything that we do, be business and so forth, put the right people. Because once you do that, that's how the economy will grow. That's how the 13 million South Africans would really get opportunities to really develop themselves. We can invest in schools so that instead of making one or few people multi-billionaires, people who can't even sell a potato at a profit, you turn them into billionaires overnight. What you do, let's invest in schools in Soweto. Out, it is my wish that a public school in Soweto, in terms of the facilities, must be the same school as here in Sundown, Sandton, where I live. If it's a public school in Sandton and a public school in Alexander or in Soweto must have the same facilities, must attract the same kind of teachers. I would rather, instead of people of Soweto waking up, kids waking up at 4 in the morning, coming to Sandton because they're looking for good teachers. As government, let's incentivize teachers living in Sandton. Go and teach in Soweto. We will incentivize you to go and teach there. But we make sure that even the facilities are are the same. So kids in Soweto can walk to school. They don't have
Mm,
to really wake up at let them wake up at 6 o'clock like these kids are here in Senton. That's the role of government. That's how we can create 20. You can imagine once you develop such policies in terms of social justice. What will happen 25, 30 years down the line? You're going to get engineers,
mm,
accountants, physicians, judges coming out of Soweto, and they go and live anywhere in the country where they can afford. So that in 30 years down the line, we don't have the so-called white areas, black areas. We have South Africans, whether you're black or white, you can live in Soweto because obviously you like to live there. You don't live in Soweto or Senton because you are forced by circumstances. I think this process is not something that we must leave to chance. We've got to really drive the integration of society, but you don't force people to go and live in Soweto or you don't force people to live in Alexander. What you
mm,
do, you make sure that as government you provide the right facilities in the respective areas. Over time, that's where you're going to see the integration of our society. When I voted for Nelson Mandela in 1994, 27th of April, 28 years later, I'm a broken South African. I feel betrayed because we are more divided than we were in 1994. We have a government through that discriminatory laws where, as business people, you've got to sign forms every time. You've got to tell government how many blacks you employ, how many whites, how many Indians,
mm,
colored, and so forth. Here, it is so discriminatory that you don't have to be a brain surgeon to understand. Once you divide people like that, like the National Party did, you pay the price, and we are paying the price for that.
mm,
And as a Section SA, we are committed to this project of long-term integration of South African society because that's how
mm,
God made us, all of us. I'm not a mistake. I'm proud of who I am, and I respect and I want to coexist with people who don't look like me. We take ourselves as human beings, but we cannot discriminate against South Africans. I want to be a South African first before I can really be anything else.
mm. So I think it's interesting that you kind of mention a lot of that because one of the things that we see as a point of legislation that's currently sitting before the president and is waiting his signature is the Equity Amendment Act. And obviously, the Equity Amendment Act is being viewed as a potential sledgehammer for businesses, specifically private businesses. So it would basically allow the government to force private businesses to employ at a certain quota. So private businesses typically employ based on merit, what we'd call meritocracy. But whereas as the government seem to be have this now idea that they are going to force private businesses to transform by adopting quotas in various sectors, and a lot of sectors have stressed, that they're a little bit concerned by this because the skills don't always exist. It isn't necessarily a lack of will; they just don't exist. And the financial sector is one that the government's targeted. I know that if you look in the financial sector, I work in the financial sector, it's like there's very few people that are actually qualified to do the job. I would hire anybody based on their merits, but I mean they just don't exist, and people cry out for the skills every day. But things like this, when they're coming up, and then a lot of white people kind of look at it and they go, well, that potentially may mean that my routes to progress, my ability to progress within the business and to get promoted and recognized for my hard work is basically going to get curtailed because of a quota. And that's what we've seen in the government sector. So a lot of them are now, as you know, there's a massive exodus of white South Africans with skills that are leaving the country. But it's not just them. A mistaken belief is that it's just white people that are leaving. But I think according to the last statistics that were taken, more black professionals leave the country than white professionals. So it's, it shows you that these kind of policies have a negative impact on both the parts of the population. They impact the white population and the black population. And what it does is it disincentivizes people to work hard and in many instances to take their money and leave. How would you combat that? How would you encourage the people to come back?
Well, let me, give South Africans hope and real hope, not just really a pie in the sky type of hope. Let the ANC continue with those discriminatory, punishing policies. Fortunate enough, South Africans have seen through them, black and white. All South Africans. That's why they punish them. If you look at their performance, electoral performance over the last few years, South Africans are hurtful, they're really tired. They've had enough of ANC. ANC is not going to fool any black person with a little bit of brain that discriminatory laws are going to benefit them, because they failed to benefit them over the last 28 years, because they know what they're actually pushing for. It's a cadre incentives, and those who benefit directly out of this. So I can assure South Africans, we are going to have a government without the ANC in 2024. They can come out with their policy conferences. Fortunate enough, ANC is not going to be part of the multi-party government that is going to be formed in 2024. So let them actually encourage them to push hard to promote those policies that South Africans don't want. South Africans to actually want a non-racial South Africa that does not discriminate against any South African. So actually, for me, the more ANC articulates such policies, the more exciting I get, because it's like a God-given opportunity. I don't have to do anything. It's just to really say to people, can you see? They want to continue with their looting. They want to continue in the empowerment of politically connected people.
Mm.
Because you, as an ordinary South African, look at the last 28 years, what they've done to you.
Mm. But how would you incentivize the people to come back? I mean, obviously, there's a lot of black and white skill that have left the country. How would you incentivize them to come back? Because we can't build the country without them, right? I mean, we need skill. We need them to come home. So how would you incentivize them to
Well,
come back?
I think one thing for sure is that I travel, and I know people literally lots of places in the world, and I tell you, when you come across South Africans, be in London or Sydney or New York or anywhere in the world, I think people did not leave South Africa because they did not like South Africa.
Mm.
They left South Africa because of what ANC was doing to the country.
Mm.
So people are ready to come back anytime, because this place is a special place. It
Mm.
just really needs a political environment that is conducive for all to feel that they will be treated fairly as per the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa.
Mm.
I'm quite convinced that with the Action SA in the leadership of this multi-party government, obviously people will have to. They're going to watch the first few years to see what we are doing, and I respect that. So because I'm a very strong believer in listening to people, but ultimately I believe what people do than what they say. And I encourage people to give us a chance and watch to see what we're doing. There's a difference between what we preach and what we do. And if ever we do what we preach, I expect that you're going to see an influx of South Africans, including non-South Africans, because this country, as you're aware, was built at the back of migrants. So we want to get people of the world, the skills from the world. We want money from the world to come back to come to this country. So we will not
Mm.
only encourage South Africans who have left, would want other skills that are in New York or in London, where it's a I mean, 12 months, you play golf, you can go and have good wines, great restaurants, and so forth, in a country that can obviously really protect you, because we will invest in policing. I think the rule of law, it's going to be one of our key priorities. Bring
Mm.
back, we will bring within the next first 6 months of our government, we need to bring the scorpions back. We need to ensure that our law enforcement agencies are led by professional men and women who have really been sidelined to ensure that we bring back the law and order. So that, you know what, whether you're a man or a woman, really be able to really walk to the shop on your own without really having to really look on your side or when you
Mm,
drive. To make life difficult, South Africa unbearable for criminals because honestly, personally, I'm not prepared to live with criminals.
mm,
Anyway, I've demonstrated this when I was the mayor of the city of Johannesburg. Without the support of national government, now you can imagine once we take over national government, we're now in charge of the police and the army. I can tell you, I want South Africans to know that the ministry of what is now today called Minister of Police is not going to be the Minister of Police. It's going to be the Minister of Law and Order.
mm,
Because I think we've reached a stage where we need law and order. We don't need policing. I
mm,
can tell you, our prisons, we are not going to really have correctional services. We're going to have prisons so that you understand. You hate other people. You go to prison. We're not interested short term in rehabilitation. I want you to be scared to go to jail.
mm,
We're a country where 54% of our people live below the breadline. Those are the people I care about. Law abiding South Africans. Those are the people I care about. You violate their rights. I would really believe very strongly that those who really break the law, they must understand there are consequences. You go to prison, you go to prison.
mm.
And we will treat you as such. In that way, you know what? 15, 20 years down the line, we'll reap the fruits of and the toughness in ensuring that when we say we want to protect law abiding citizens, that's exactly what we mean.
Okay. There's actually some good stuff in there, and it's some of it's really good to unpack. So I suppose the first thing I would ask you is what's Action SA's approach, say gun rights? We've obviously seen the Firearm Controls Amendment Act coming, which got proposed last year, which proposed to remove self-defense as a reason to owning a firearm. What's Action SA's view on firearm ownership?
How can anyone ever think of taking but at the same time allowed serious rifles to be carried by criminal elements. For us as Section SA, we believe law-abiding citizens must be allowed to have guns to really protect themselves because, unfortunately, our country right now, we don't have a government that has got us, our interest at heart. So if I've got to really protect myself and my family, I see no reason why any government should really interfere with it. But obviously, if you use it for criminal activity, you'll go to the prisons I was talking about. You're not going to go to recreational facility or correctional services. We don't really correct people who violate the rights of law-abiding citizens.
Mm. So obviously you're saying that you're wondering how anybody could take firearms away from us, especially in such a state as ours. But what would your approach be to the current firearms issues which we have in the country? So one of the problems we have is to get licensed to use a firearm now is taking average times now to like nearly 48 months, nearly to 3 years, 2 to 3 years. It's taking some people. It's highly cost prohibitive. So the only real kind of people that seem to be able to afford to go through the process are the middle to upper classes, and it does mean that those that are on like the, should we say, the lower middle class to the lower class actually can't afford to buy one legally. And it's much easier to buy one illegally than it is to get licensed. So what would you do to what would you do to reform the process?
Yeah, look, I think the reason why the ANC government, it's really frustrating our people from acting in a legal fashion. I can tell you right now, one of my helpers, I was with him this morning, was telling me why he was not at work on Monday because he's lost his ID. He went on Monday. He says he was there at Home Affairs from 6 o'clock. He left just before 2 o'clock. He never got help to go and apply for an ID. So it's South Africans must not really look at the ANC problems in a narrow perspective. ANC has really destroyed the moral fiber. They've destroyed our infrastructure. They've destroyed everything. That's why, for me, it's important as a country we need to bring God back into our lives.
Mm.
I want to live in a country where our kids, when they go to school every day, every morning before they go to class, to really have a prayer, because all religions, we all believe in God. So South Africa, it's a secular state. For those 2 or 3% who don't know anything, it's their right. Let them go to class. But right now, the ANC government, because of their communist background, they believe we must not bring God into our lives. A section is a no. We are not unapologetic. We're very clear about this matter. That everything that we do, God is going to be the one that we're asking for His wisdom to really guide us, so that we're not only afraid of the police, or we're not afraid of another man. We must first really be scared of the bigger being. And that's really the tragedy of what has happened the last 28 years of our democracy. That's why you see we're the murder capital of the world, we're the rape capital of the world. How do you live in a society where 11 can rape one woman in one sitting? I mean, how evil can it get?
Mm.
It is, you can see you are no longer dealing with human beings. You're no longer dealing with animals, because animals don't even do this. We've reached a stage where ANC has normalized the evil. And we've got to fight hard to make sure that as part of the work that we do, we also deal with eradicating evil from society, bring
But what
in
but
values.
what would you do to change it? So that's what I was saying. The Firearms Control Act. Would you repeal it and liberalize the law? Would you just implement the existing law that's there stronger? Like what would you do to change the status quo?
Well, look at the current legislation. We've got to make sure that we speed up the process. But at the same time, while we're giving a lot of people are not applying for guns because they want to have guns. Yes, some want to. A lot of people are applying because their lives are at risk.
Mm.
So obviously, if you can have a government that's committed in the provision of law and order in the country, a lot of people won't need guns in any way.
Mm.
So you'll cut out more than a half of the people who are applying for guns. And those who are applying, you can really speed up the process. And
Mm.
also at the same time, make sure that those who've got guns illegally, you deal with them, put them away. So that people understand that you cannot really have gun and you cannot have an illegal gun, and even if you've got a legal gun, you use it for criminal activity. There are very, very serious consequences.
Mm. So obviously, a key point that you mentioned there was around the illegal proliferation of firearms in the country, and I think by the current estimates, the illegal proliferation comes from three sources. The first is it comes from the army and the police. The second is it comes from what they call the struggle firearms, or the ANC's firearms they got from the Russians during the struggle generation. They still don't know where a lot of those are. But then the third one is the amount that are being illegally smuggled into the country through, the various border. Let's call them border breaches. I don't know what else to call them because our border is kind of like a bit of a washing line. So I know that Action SA is obviously in the news quite a bit because of your stance on foreigners, and so from that perspective, how would you tackle the illegal foreigners and the activities that they're involved in the country? Would you crack down on them, send them all home, or what's your approach?
Well, you need to really have within the police. Within the police, you need to have special units to deal with various criminal challenges. Let's say if it's got to do with illegal immigration, have special units that can deal with it. If you've got cases of illegal firearms, have a special unit that you can hold them accountable. When you have murderers, have murder and robbery squads that can deal with murderers, and when you've got rapists, make sure that you have specialized people and specialized units within the police to make sure that we can more than double up on our cause, so that I think that once you are arrested, I think honestly for me, my view is that the first few years, with a number of cases that there's a backlog that we've got, we've got to find a way to run 24-hour courts
Mm.
so that we can fast track justice, because obviously some people, we don't want someone to be in jail for 6 months only to be found that this poor person is innocent. But on the other hand, I don't want to see a criminal getting bail because the jails are full and he commits more crime. So we've got to speed up the provision of justice by ensuring that we empower the prosecutors, the magistrate, the judges, in ensuring that we have systems, not people working from 8 to 5 o'clock. Not a chance. I think the first 5 years or so, we've got to really practically demonstrate our seriousness in dealing with these matters. And fortunately enough, if it was not because of affirmative action programs of our country, lots of professional, the prosecutors, professional magistrate retired at 60. Some of them have been pushed out of the system because of the color of their skin, or because they are not cadres, they are not prepared. So bring these people back. I don't understand why, as a country where we need the skill, we must retire someone at 60. I mean,
Mm.
I have no intention to retire personally. I will actually only start preparing for my retirement at the age of 80. Between now and 80, please don't talk to me about retirement age, because what am I going to retire for? Bring these people who are sitting at home at 60, 65, 70. Make them the magistrate, make them school principals, make
Mm.
them teachers, and so forth. Bring them back, and bring them back on the basis of skill, not on the basis of the color of.
Mm. Yeah, no, and I agree with all of that. But I suppose that all kind of comes back to some of the points that I raised already. A lot of the, Ian Cameron, the leader of Action Society, was recently in the news because he had an interaction with Sele, where Becky Sele basically told him shut up, and that made the news for a while. But one of the key points that he raised with the minister was around that of how many people that were skilled with this force have left the police, and as a result, the people that are now investigating crimes are like, low-level beat cops that have only been on duty for like a couple months, and then they're being asked to basically act as detectives. And he's like, well, that's why you can't prosecute anything, because these guys don't really know what they're doing. It's no fault to them. They haven't had the years and years of training to get there. And I suppose the big issue is now, as I also alluded to, a lot of these kind of skilled workers are, South African skills. I mean, the ANC hates South African skills. They like Cuban skills, but they hate South African skills. But those skills are very valued overseas. And so there's a lot of that skill that's like when they find themselves pushed out of various industries, they just immigrate. So, I'm in agreement. You need them to come back to help build the country. But how do you incentivize them to come back? I mean, we saw this recently with Sarkolika. Sarkolika and Solidarity were approached by Eskom to help them try get some of the old guard from Eskom to come back to help them refix Eskom, because they were like, who's the best people to fix it? Probably the original designers, and I'd agree with that. But a lot of the designers or the original people that they're kind of old now, and a lot of them, when they were approached, just said, we're really not interested. So how do you get the how do you
Tell me,
incentivize those
would
people?
you if you left South Africa right now, you've got a good job in where anyway, would you come back to South Africa? Do you blame anyone for immigrating? People don't really leave because they don't like the country.
Mm,
They leave the country because they don't like what is happening in the country. They're discriminated by a new democratic dispensation. The only way you can say incentivize them to come back is to do the right things. If we don't do the right things, I expect them not to come back. My own daughter, who studied and worked in the US, didn't want to come back, and I had to plead with her to say, please, to come back. And was she unfair? No. I think, and there's millions of such people all over the world, including people, foreign nationals who are in London or in Scotland or in Nigeria or wherever place,
Australia,
as long as they've
America.
got the skills, as long as they've got the skills that we need here in South Africa, not the Cuban skills. We bring Cuban doctors who can speak to our own people. They've been trained on the basic medicine. You need the real skills. So what we need to do, let's identify the skills that we want and give people incentives to come here. But the country has got to function. The country has got to be safe. The country has got to embrace all of us and protect us like how the Constitution protects South Africans. You don't incentivize them by saying, no, come back in this mess. Right now, we're in a mess.
Mm,
I don't really blame people who are taking that decision. I was just really lucky that my daughter, I managed to really convince her and show her the big picture because I was closer to her. There are others, I believe the only way I can incentivize them to come back, and they will, is to remove the ANC from government. And once we remove the ANC from government, we then apply and put together a professional public service and treat South Africans as South African first. You'll be black or white or whatever, that'll be secondary. You're going to be first South Africans. And your skills, we will utilize them on the basis of the merit that you bring into the table.
mm. Yeah, I'm in agreement with all of that. I do wonder though how we going to fix the mess if we don't get the people. But then I also understand that once we fix the people, you can go and get the people. So it seems a little bit like might be a little bit of a chicken and egg story, but we'll kind of put a pin in that and I
No,
suppose
it's not a chicken and egg. No, it's not a chicken and egg. I think I'm telling you, people are not going to come back to South Africa until such time that South Africa is not in a chaotic environment like it is right now. Honestly, I don't blame people who have left. And I know that they miss to come back to South Africa, but South Africa is not making it fair or conducive for them to come back.
mm,
So that's why I said to you earlier on, I want to give them hope that come 2024, which is just 2 years, in 2 years' time, we are not going to have an ANC government in this country.
mm,
They belong to the dustbins of our history.
mm. I hope you're right on that front, and I'm sure you will be. So moving on to the next topic is one of the things that we're seeing quite a bit in the Western world, which is causing a lot of people concern, is the rise of like what they call critical theories. I don't know how familiar you are with critical theories. A big one is around critical race theory, but we're not going to discuss that. But what we will talk about is critical gender theories, where it's this whole kind of like pronoun game where it's like you must declare your pronoun, and then people are saying that they can transition, and they can one day they can be a man, next day they can be a girl, and we've seen these kind of policies now come out of the DA's Western Cape. So the DA kind of put a policy forward in their education departments where they basically were advocating for unisex bathrooms. And in doing so, like a lot of people looked at it and they were like, this is critical gender theory being employed or being deployed in by the DA, which is obviously like what considers itself to be a neoliberal party. And this is really kind of like a very neoliberal kind of policy. What's your view on that? So on the whole kind of
I
issue?
think our country is facing bigger problems than to really worrying about those issues that are affecting the Western world, where everything, most of the stuff works. At this point in time, as a country, let us ensure that we don't discriminate against anyone. If you decide on your sexual orientation, honestly, it's up to you. But please don't let me engage on those subject matters at this point in time. The only thing I'm saying is, as government, we protect your right to practice whatever. But I think right now we need to rebuild our infrastructure. We need to build schools. We need to educate our people. That's really South Africa. It's a developing country. We can't waste time on having debates on matters of this nature. The only guarantee I'd really like to give to anyone is that under our administration, no one is going to be discriminated. And let us not waste our energies and time that we spend the monies on conferences to go and discuss those issues. Let's spend time to see how we're going to fix our infrastructure so that people can have trains, can have public transport system that is working. We fix our police that can protect all of us in the event someone hates you for your sexual orientation, that there are police that are going to deal with it. That is really what I really urge South Africans for the next few years. Let us deal with the immediate issue. Let's deal with the lived experiences of South Africans, not lived experiences of people in Sweden. They've got totally different issues for them. For them, if you tell a Swedish or someone from Norway about the number of people that are being killed in this country, they don't have such people killed in 5 years. So we've got crisis on our hands, and those are the issues I'm saying. Let's spend our time to discuss and finding solution to them.
And it's interesting you mentioned Sweden and Switzerland and Western Europe. But are you a member of the WEF?
No, I'm afraid not.
Do you how do you see South Africa's role going forward with the WEF, specifically in line with Gender 2030?
I think those are the subject matters I'm saying is, for me, at this point in time, my focus is not going to be around those issues. If there's one ministry, we will give the responsibility to deal with those issues. But I really want us as a country, let us focus on our immediate things, because I think if we are going to allow some of these NGOs from the world to come and impose certain values that are not in line with our lived experiences as South Africans, it'll be a big, big mistake that we can really make. So we've got to really be very careful that, more especially there's in international NGOs who rely on conferences and so forth. Their role all the time is to expect South Africa to apply the same standards an advanced country like the United States. It can't be. I think our people don't have public transport system. 80% of our schools are dysfunctional. So I'm not going to really honestly entertain having such discussions. I want to really talk about how can you quickly ensure that 100%, I mean, all our schools are 100% functioning. There's not a single school in this country
Mm.
that is dysfunctional. Like, I don't want to live in a country where 80% of schools are dysfunctional. So I'm saying is, yeah, my view is that in the event or when that we the ones in government, we want to put our energies on local matters. That is why our senior government officials, with conferences and so forth, we've got to cut down on this international conferences and travels. I think we know we've probably a crisis of crime in this country. I don't understand how I can spend the money to send a delegation to New York to go and attend a conference on crime. So I'd like to really spend time to spend that money to go and deal with the crime that is confronting us right now. So we've got to cut down on international travel and conferences that are not going to add value to us with our limited budget.
Mm. So if I can expand, so the WEF's policy around 2030 is commonly referred to as "you'll own nothing and be happy," which is a kind of an expression of expropriation and the end of private property rights. We've already seen a number of what they consider to be social justice type initiatives that are hitting the Western world, and obviously their big thing is now around the climate change. So specifically around lowering fertilizer for farmers. We're seeing protests in Western Europe. We're seeing it in Australia and Canada. And a lot of the WEF's agenda is kind of like what's commonly referred to as they're trying to force people to eat bugs because they say it's more economically sustainable, apparently. Now, you might look at it and go, it's conspiratorial, but it's all on their website. And the WEF, Klaus Schwab, is very famous for having to say he has infiltrated the cabinets of the world. So some of his key components or his key players are obviously we have Justin Trudeau in Canada, we have Boris Johnson in England. I don't know how long that's going to last, and we've got Ardeen in New Zealand, and they all seem to be having the same kind of policies that they're adopting, specifically around digital ID. It's around digital currency. It's state control. And one of the key things that came out the other day was around them saying that private ownership of cars, they're now considered to be wasteful because of obviously the emissions and all the other stuff that they said to it. So when I said, like, what's your approach? Are you a member? I know that last year, I think we covered it on our channel. Justice Minister of the ANC joined onto the WEF's program as a contributor. He joined, that's Ronald Lamolo. He joined there as one of their young leaders. And then we had Cyril Ramaphosa as one of the leaders. So many people kind of try look and they think it's highly possible that some of the policies that they're seeing in the ANC government are being influenced by these foreign entities, specifically the WF and the other. Should we say it's the globalist type agenda? So would you consider yourself a globalist, or are you like South Africa
Now,
first?
let me practically tell you what happened when I took over as the mayor of the city of Johannesburg. The former mayor, Park Stow, international, he spent more time traveling the world than actually being in the office. The administration was run by the bureaucrats. He was a member of. He belonged to every international organization. Some of it, I mean, it disrupted his agenda to be the president of the local government and so forth. And when I took over, I had to call each one of them personally to say, I'm afraid I've got challenges here. I've got 180 squatter camps. I've got 300,000 housing backlog. I'm in a city that's been taken over by criminal elements, and the former mayor used to call it a world-class African city. I said, please give me at least 10 years or so. We'll talk to you. But in the meantime, we are happy to watch developments, and whatever applies to us, we will comply. But for the moment, I'm afraid traveling is not going to be part of my agenda. I think when I took over, the mayor's office had 27 million rands of the mayor's international travel. In the first year, I traveled once for my first year. So in fact, I traveled three times when I was the mayor. The first travel was actually to Canada to one of this local government bodies where Pakistan was supposed to have been the president. And when they invited me, I actually even declined to attend. But they actually had to plead with me to really come and explain to the world as to why I'm personally not getting involved. Now I said, no, the city can be a member like all the other cities, but we cannot really take leadership roles in these organizations. I said, officials in the city of Joburg, when I took over, I made it clear to the city manager. I said, please. every international travel henceforth, I need to really know why people are traveling and really motivation. We cut international travels from the previous year of, I think, about 72 million to just over 3.5 million. Because people were just really traveling the left, right, and attending conferences. And you talk to someone when they attend these conferences, they spend more time actually shopping and attending shows than actually attending these conferences. So I think the same approach must be adopted at national level. We just don't have the money for ministers to be traveling. One thing I can tell you, if I look at South African embassies all over the world, I personally believe that we can do with 50%. We can do with less than 50% of embassies. So we've got to close down a lot of embassies. So we don't have to be in every country. We really have to really group them, and instead of having an ambassador in Zimbabwe, Uganda, Zambia, no, it can't. I think let's look at countries where, yes, you need representation, where, obviously I think it's an important market. Like, definitely you need to really have someone in the United States, you need someone in England, without any doubt, you need someone in China, you know but do I need to really go and have an embassy in whatever country? No, I think I'm telling you, the South Africans will cut our embassies by minimum of 50%, including the ministers themselves. I want to tell South Africans, Action SA being the leader of government come 2024, we are not going to have maximum 25 ministers. And we're not going to have a single deputy minister. We don't need to. What do we need deputy ministers for? Because look at every time when a minister goes away, another minister must act. In the meantime, we've got a deputy minister. That shows this is just an employment agency in a country like us. This is money that you must use to build schools, clinics, and hospitals, universities. So these are things that we can address, but we need to be tough. We need to take unpopular decisions that are going to upset the people who are benefiting out of this, because you're going to be unpopular with some people. But I think one needs to look at is the interest of South Africa. Because as you can imagine, these billions I'm talking about that you can save. Yes, all these guys losing benefits of international travels and so on, they're not going to be happy with us. But you know what? People of Soweto, Alexander, and Yensenton, you're going to make sure that the streets are tarred, you build new schools, you build in clinics, and so forth. Those are things that must be a priority, not a priority of the elite that is going to benefit, that are going to benefit out of this. So yeah, one has to really have a thick skin to ensure that don't allow name calling and insults to really control how you approach matters. And I think, and I was born like that. I'm not in a beauty competition. I'm not in this job to make friends. For me, I value friendship. Friendship is very important to me, but it must be a kind of friendship that is really based on solid foundation of doing the right thing. So if you want to be my friend, to be a friend that is not going to betray me, because Herman Mashaba will never betray anyone. Herman Mashaba, if he doesn't like something, he's not going to gossip you around the corner. He's going to talk to you direct. So don't betray me. That's how I was born. It's in my DNA, and I love it. And I'm angry with what happened over the last 28 years, and I believe I can use my privileged position to do my best to save this beautiful country of ours, so that my grandchildren can be the beneficiaries of the work that I'm currently doing.
So I got a couple more questions, and then we're nearly approaching the hour, so I won't keep you for a hell of a lot longer. So I suppose the next question is naturally around what's your approach to the World Health Organization. So the World Health Organization has recently proposed a treaty that would basically cede all national authority to them, so that in future, if there was a pandemic, they would be able to force a global lockdown until they could basically force global vaccinations. What's your view on that, and specifically around
No,
ceding
look, I
authority?
think with no ways that we will give the sovereignty of South Africa to anyone else.
Mm,
Not when I don't know where people with no agenda, because in a democratic environment like South Africa, we are, when for you to be the president, you've got a mandate from South Africans. So I'm not going to outsource that mandate to someone who was not elected by South Africans. So the mandate will come from South Africans. We will never give up our sovereignty to anyone else in the world.
mm. And how about your approach to EWC, expropriation without compensation? Because we've seen the government is still saying they're going to pursue expropriation. And every day I see news articles where it's basically a new law that gives a minister a power to basically expropriate a right from somewhere. I think this morning, the latest one, which is published by Biz News, was around Gwede Mantashe trying to get his hands on more mineral rights around the production of oil in the country. So specifically around expropriation of without compensation, what's your view? Is how important is property rights?
uh, More than important. I think what the ANC and the EFF are proposing, you can imagine they are proposing to take the land that I've paid for, and I don't know anyone for it, that my house must be built on top of the land owned by the state. That's a kind of nonsense. That's not going to happen. Our current constitution allows government to expropriate without compensation in the event that you need this piece of land or for public good, and the owner. It's unfair. It's not doing anything, and it's causing havoc without any doubt. But you have no right whatsoever to come and take my house and to say so the land belongs to the state. When I live in here, I improve my house, or a farmer, it's farming, commercial farming. It's not the land that people are using for speculation at the expense of society. I think our constitution is very clear, and I personally believe, as Section SA, that the current constitutional framework on expropriation is more than enough. Fortunate enough, ANC and EFF will never get the necessary majority to change it. So they can come and actually, for me, as I said to you earlier on, the more they articulate such policies, the better for poor parties like us to come out open to say to citizens, look at this socialist and communist. Look at what happened to Zimbabwe. You want our country to be another Zimbabweans. That's when people actually wake up. And in the past, they survived because they had no one to challenge them. And Action SA is there to challenge anything that is not in the interest of the people of South Africa.
Okay, I think mentioned them, so I'm going to ask you a question on them, and it's the number one concern that we see people have when deciding whether or not to vote with Action SA, and that's actually Action SA's role with the EFF. They've obviously seen Action SA go into some coalitions with the EFF and be willing to negotiate with the EFF, and that's obviously now led to the media classing Action SA as being like EFF sympathizers. What's your approach to the EFF?
Well, I think that is the a DA theory because DA has taken a decision to use fear mongering, particularly to the white communities. I think it's to South Africans. If you look at our electoral support. Cuts across. Not even Nelson Mandela received the kind of electoral support, a diversified one. Going to the IEC web. We've got on one hand, the DA obviously selling this fear. On the other hand, I've got the ANC that is treating us, going to the black communities. When they go to the black communities, they tell them we're a DA light. So I think for us as Action SA, I mean, come from marketing background and I've got a little bit of brain. I look at ANC and DA, these two friends, because ANC and DA are big friends. So they work together in the approach. One has decided to paint me as EFF light, and the other one decides to paint me as DA light. Do you know why they're doing this? Because obviously they know black people are scared of DA, very scared. If we want Action SA to lose black support, is when they know that I'm associated with DA. Action SA is dead with black support. On the other hand, if Action SA is associated with the EFF, Action is dead. So what we need to do, we are very clear for us as Action SA. The only party we cannot work with is the ANC. That one is not negotiable. EFF at local government level, the DA actually, I was lucky. They're the ones who put together the multi-party government in Johannesburg in 2016, bringing the EFF on board. When the EFF didn't want me, and I even said to the DA a week before, I said, no, guys, being a mayor for me is the last thing that I want. They made me to work with the EFF. But made me to work with the EFF, but they did not want me to engage the EFF. And for me to pass my budget and so forth, I needed the EFF's the votes. So for me now to treat EFF with respect, that's what made the DA very uncomfortable with me, and they can live with it uncomfortable because the EFF and I, we come from two totally different worlds in terms of our policies. But at local government level, I've had the privilege of working very well with them. The DA were the most unreliable partner. In fact, to be honest with you, and I say this to the DA all the time, the DA has lost their leadership, has lost, honestly, it's unfortunate, have lost a sense of difference between a lie and the truth. They're habitual liars. They will give you something in writing now, and 5 minutes later they will deny that they don't know what you're talking about. Even when you produce it to them in writing, they will deny it. So I know what I'm dealing with. And on the other hand, with the ANC, I know I'm dealing with a criminal organ. At the end of the day, you know what? People can obviously see through those people that I'm dealing with a criminal organization called ANC, and I'm dealing with an unreliable partner as the DA, and we'll start all operate with the DA as and when it's important. Because one, why I will work with the DA is because majority, big number of DA people are good people. It's just the current leadership of the is toxic for this country because they believe in what they call ANC of Cyril Ramaphosa. So, and are prepared to really work with them. And they've accepted to be opposition. I'm not in this game to be really in opposition. I'm in this game to govern so that I can change the lives of our people. Not, I can't. You can't be in a political party. A political party serves as an employment agency. So DA has already confirmed to South Africans, the current leadership, that they don't want to govern. They want the ANC of Cyril Ramaphosa to govern. That's why they protect them all the time to ensure that Cyril Ramaphosa succeed. So I think let me leave it there. It is up
So I
to
suppose
the
the question I got to ask you is,
viewers and South Africans to really decide. People are not fools.
yeah. So I suppose the question I got to ask you is, come 2024, would you allow the EFF to join into a governing coalition with you?
Well, the first thing that we need to do as a country is to ensure that we don't have 50% ANC and EFF. That scares the hell out of me.
Mm.
It really does. But in the event we sit with the ANC, EFF, it really scares out the hell out of me. That is why I'm working around the clock, work like a dog to ensure that we can bring them both way below 50% so that I can form alliance at national level with political parties that to some extent I share some values with them. The DA, Action SA, people are happy that we work with them, but they want prepared to say, please work with the DA, but they are an unreliable partner. Don't really trust them, but work with them. Fortunate enough, EA Freedom Front Plus is growing, and they are also very reliable. I think if I look at the the Freedom Front Plus, you can do a handshake with them. You don't even have to really have a written agreement. Whereas with a DA, even if it's in black and white, I can tell it doesn't mean anything.
Last question I got for you. It's a really easy one. How would you class Action SA? Centre right, centre left, right wing, hard right,
Um,
hard left?
we are a party that stands for a non-racial South Africa, that stands for social justice, that stands for free market economy, that believes in the rule of law, that stands for ethical leadership, that stands for quality education, that stands electoral reform, where one day the residents and the voters of this country will one day get an opportunity to elect their own public representatives through the political parties. So we operate on the basis of the lived experiences of people. We're not a party of ism. We don't operate. We are not an ideological party. We are a practical, pragmatic party that deals with the lived experience of our people.
Thank you very much for your time. I hope it's too taxing. It's I think it's the audience will find it very interesting just to hear you talk about your the coalition government and the ANC.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate the opportunity.
Thanks very much for your time, Herman. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.